Okay, this is going to talk about Excel Module 1. This is just kind of an introduction to Excel. We won't really get real deep into the weeds on a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to adjust the volume on this. Um, so, but just talking about Excel, when you open up Excel, you get something that looks like this. You know, if you don't already have a spreadsheet open, but you get something like this. It's just a whole window full of these little bitty boxes. Um, these boxes are called cells, and these cells can contain data. It can contain um, different kinds of data. It can contain dates, it can contain numbers, it can contain money, it can contain names, it can contain a lot of different things. You kind of dictate what goes in there. Um, just like anything else, things happen wherever, like when we were in Word, things happen wherever the insertion point is. With Excel, things happen wherever the active cell is. So when I click on a cell, this becomes the active cell. So the active cell is now cell E11, or column E and row 11 meet. And we'll talk about that in a second. But this is the active cell. And if you ever need to, if you ever don't want to like cross and figure out what this stuff is, there's this little box here that will tell you what the active cell is. So right now I'm in cell E11. Um, as I said before, columns are represented by letters and rows are represented by numbers 10, 11, 12. And these letters go on for a long way. When it gets to Z, it actually starts all over again with two letters. So it'll go from Z to AA, AB, AC, AD, all the way to AZ, and it'll start again with a B. So it'll be BA, BB, BC. Eventually it'll get to ZZ, and it'll start all over again with three letters. AAA, AAB, AAC, and then it'll just continue going. So these, and the rows can go down to like something like 17,000. So these sheets can get like massively huge. We're not going to get anywhere close to that. We're just going to, we're going to stick to pretty much things you can see. You may have to scroll a little, but you won't have to scroll far. All right. Talking again about a cell. So this cell, I just typed a bunch of garbage in it. And it looks like this garbage kind of creeped over into cell F8. But all of this stuff is actually in cell E8. And if you ever need to know what's really in a cell, if you click on it and you look at this formula, this is called a formula bar, it will show you what's really in the cell. Because sometimes just looking at it, you can't tell what's really in a cell. And then we'll cross that bridge in a little bit. But even though it looks like it creeped over into F8, it's not there. This stuff is not really there. If I click on F8, you'll see that there's nothing there. And I can type stuff in it. And everything that was in E8 is still there. Now I just have stuff in F8 too. If I ever need to, like this is too small for me to see what's really in it, I can go up here and put my insertion point, or my cursor, in between, and you have to pay attention to what cursor looks like in Excel. So right now it's this big fat white plus sign. And to make it a little bit bigger, to make the cell column E a little bit bigger, I can put my insertion point between E and F and see how it becomes that double-headed arrow. And I can double click and it will expand E out just enough to be where it needs to be. I'm just going to get rid of the stuff in there and make this thing smaller again, because we're going to need it in a second. So that's a way, or you can click and you can drag. That'll do it too. Get this thing back to where it was before. All right, I'm going to get rid of all the stuff that's in it. All right, selecting cells. So if you look, my cursor is this big fat white plus sign. And when it's a big fat white plus sign, I can select cells, and I can just click on cells, and that will make it the active cell. If I need to select a range of cells, I can, big fat white plus sign, I can select and then drag, whichever way I need to drag, and that will select this range of cells. So I have just selected the range E6 through E13. And I can select this, diagonally too. I can go this way, or I can go that way. And now I've selected cell range E6 through I15. And that's the way we address these ranges of cells that we select. If I need to select multiple non-adjacent cells, I can select the first cell, hold down on the control key, and then select other cells. And this is how I select multiple non-adjacent cells. If I need to select like an entire row or a column, I can just click on, like here's, I can select the entire column to E, and I have selected the entire E column all the way down to like 17,000. And if I select, the row 20, I've selected row all the way to ZZZZ, or however long it goes. So I've selected the entire row or column. All right. So that's selecting, and you pay attention because how we select cells is going to come in real important here in a second. All right, so one of the things that Excel is good about is doing a lot of the work for us. And what Excel can do is it can take something that you've already entered and apply it to other rows or columns or whatever. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to go into cell C4. And I'm just going to type the number 1. And then we'll go down to C5, and then I'm going to type in the number 2. So I have the number 1 and number 2 over top of each other. So now what I want to do is I want to select this range, 1 and 2. And now what I want to do is I want to have 1 and 2, and I don't want to type 3, 4, and 5, but I want 3, 4, and 5 to be there, but I just don't want to type it. So what I can do is I can select this range that kind of establishes a pattern, 1, 2, and then I want it to next be 3, 4, 5. So I've got both these cells is what it's going to take to establish my pattern, and I'm going to go into, see my cursor is a big fat white plus sign, but right here in the corner is this little bitty green square, and if I put my mouse right over top of it, it changes from a big fat white plus sign to a skinny black plus sign. Now I'm going to click on that and drag down and watch what happens. See this number that's following my cursor right now? It says 3, there's 4, there's 5. What it does is this is called a autofill. This little handle here is called an autofill handle. And what I did was I selected 1 and 2, and I did this autofill and drug down. And so Excel says, well, he must want this to be 3, he must want this to be 4, he must want this to be 5. Now, if you made a mistake and do this, if you just select 1 and drag, all you're going to do is copy. You have to get both of them because that's what's established this pattern. Here, I'll just show you another one. I'm going to do 2, and then I'm going to do 4. So now we've got a pattern selected, but we're doing it by 2s. And I can drag, and this time we'll do it by 3s. 3, and then 6. Select both. Autofill handle, and drag. Alright, so you can, now just to show you, we've established a lot of patterns here now. Alright, because I've got 1, 2, because now I've got 1, 2, 3 going this way. I got cells going down. So like, watch this, I can grab hold of the entire range, and I can drag it this way, and I can drag it this way, and it's going to continue the patterns that we've already established on out to like crazy numbers. So like here I've got it going by 8s. 8, 16, 24, 32, 44, all the way down to 144. This is all, and this is like 18s. 18, 36, 54, all the way up to 144. So you can keep these patterns going. So let me get rid of some of these numbers. All right, and this is going to come in handy because you're going to need to know how to do this autofill, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to finish the practical test. It's just really important that you know how to do this stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of math. We need to get into this. Now, I always talk about this. If you've ever taken an algebra class, you probably know the whole PEMDAS thing. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which just is an acronym to help you remember the order of operations. Please is parentheses, excuse is exponents, M or my is multiplication and division, my dear, and then Aunt Sally is addition and subtraction. So these are the orders in which you do things. just to kind of show you, I'll create a formula for you. I'm just don't pay attention to how I'm doing this. I just want to create this formula equals 3 plus 2 asterisk 5. 3 plus 2 times 5. All right. Whoops. I'm sorry. Let me make this 3. 3 plus 2 times 5. So due to PEMDAS, we would have to do the multiplication before we did it. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 would give us 13. So if I do that, I'm going to click on enter, and we see we get 13. But now I'm going to go back in here and edit this again, and this time I'm going to put parentheses around it. Whoops, wrong way. Oops. Do this. It's hard. I can hard it. I'm going to do it up here. It's easier. Close parentheses and open parentheses. So now you can see this formula reads equals parentheses 3 plus 2 close parentheses times 5. So now it's going to be, you have to do the parentheses first because p's come first, parentheses come first. So it's 3 plus 2 is 5 times 5 is 25. So now I get 25. So how you write a formula is really important if you have to write a formula like that. We won't be doing a lot of these, but what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do some simple formulas. And I'll show you a few different ways. So this time what I want to do is I want to add this cell, I'm going to add this cell to this cell to this cell. So I'm going to get 6 because 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 6. But there's different ways of doing formulas in Excel. I always suggest that when we're doing formulas, we click, first off we use cell references. We don't hard code numbers if we can get away with it. Just because one of the things that Excel is really good about is letting us change numbers on the fly. And if we have numbers hard coded in a cell, it makes it a little bit harder to change those numbers. If we're just using a cell reference, we only have to change the cell that number is in. And I'll explain this a little bit later, probably next chapter. But I'll show you. Let's just get into like creating a cell. So what I want to do is in this box here, in this cell, this is where I want the formula to go that's going to add these things together. So we start a formula in Excel just by pressing the equal key, and that pops us into kind of a formula mode in Excel. And this is the way I think you should do it, just to start off. I'm going to double click, or not double click, but just click this cell, and you can see that it added, first off it put this box around, just let me know that this cell is included in the formula, and it did the cell reference here, C4. And then just do plus D4 plus E4. And so it color codes these numbers for me and puts these boxes around it, so it kind of lets me see that my formula is right. Now, remember me telling you earlier that you have to be careful because what you see that's in a cell may not be what's really in this cell. So it looks like there's a 6 in this cell, but that's not what's really here. My formula bar tells me that what's really in that cell is a formula that adds cell references C4 to D4 to E4. And it gives me this formula. And here's the reason that we do this. Excel doesn't care what's in this. If I change this 1 to 1,562, it doesn't care. It just is going to add whatever's in there, to this formula. Alright, so that's one way of doing a formula. Let me show you another way. This one sometimes is easier. Sometimes you're going to have to do it this way, but sometimes this is easier, especially if you have a range of cells. But there's something I need to caution you about. So I'm going to start this one, formula here, and I'm going to add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. I'm going to add these cells together, and I'm going to put the formula here. So again, this is where I want my formula to go. Now what I want you to do when I do this, watch what happens to this box right here that says C9 when I start doing this formula. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to press equal. And when I press equal, watch what happens to this box. Equal. And this box changed to sum. Now, if I click this down there, there's other function, and there's even a button that says more functions. So there's a lot of functions that you can use here. Sum is addition, so it's just going to add these numbers together, and this is what I want. Alright, but remember this, just because sum is there doesn't mean it's in your formula yet. What you need to do to make this work is actually click on sum So if I click on it, you see that a couple things happened. One, it added it to my formula, and two, it opened up this box. Now, let me tell you something about this box. This box just looks at the range of cells that's above, to the left, to the right. It just looks at the range of cells that's next to it, and it guesses what you want. And usually it's right. Maybe, 3 times out of 4 it's right. But it's not always right. So you have to be sure that what it pops is what you want. I've gotten to where this lies to me enough that I just kind of ignore it and kind of move it out of the way. And after I push sum, I will still go ahead and select my range, just because this gives me this little box around it, and I can be sure that this is really what I want to add together. So my formula now reads equals the sum of the range C4 through CA. So it's going to add the cells C4 through C8 and give me my total here. 15. All right. I'm going to carry this on a little further. I'm going to do this in a different way. And the difference between doing it this way and the way I'm getting ready to show you is not all that big. It's a little bit, but sometimes one works better than the other, and you'll eventually learn which works better in the situation that you're in. Over here on the the right side of my home ribbon in my editing group, there's this little button called Auto Sum. And again, if I click it down there, you'll see that there's some functions here. But I'm just going to click on Auto Sum, and it pops a formula in there, and it creates this little flashy box around it. Now again, you have to be careful because it is just selecting the range of cells that's next to the cell that you want to put the formula in. You may not want all those numbers in. I'll give you an example of here in a second of like when you wouldn't want those numbers in. But this looks good. Sometimes I'll still go ahead and select it just to be sure that I'm right. All right. So I've showed you 3 different ways to do this. But let me show you one of the cool things about Excel. So I'm just going to look at this one. So I've created this cell, or this formula, that's going to add C4 plus D4 plus E4. And what I would like to do is actually use this same formula that's in this one for this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell, and eventually this cell. In other words, I want to add this range together. I want to add this range together. I want to add this range together. I want to add this range together, put the total here. I want to add this range together, put the total here. I want to add this range together, put the total here. But I don't want to go to all the trouble of redoing these formulas every time. Well, remember our friend, the autofill handle? This is where it comes in handy. So I'm going to double click just so we can see our formula again. So this formula says equals C4 plus D4 plus E4. These cell references, C4, D4, E4, these are called relative cell references because when you're in a formula, these relative cell references can change automatically depending on how you use the autofill. So watch, I'm going to grab hold of this box with a formula in it. I'm just going to drag it down one cell just so we can kind of get an idea of what happened. So I'm just going to drag it down one cell, let go, and you'll see that it popped the number 12 in here. I'm going to click on this cell, and look what happened to the formula. My formula up here was C4 plus D4 plus E4. My formula here is C5 plus D5 plus E5. So this was the formula that I originally had. I drug down, and Excel gave me this. So what it did is it took the cell references of C4, D4, E4, and Excel said, okay, he's dragging down, so he must want this one to be C5, D5, E5. I screwed that up. Let's get out of here. Whoops, there we go. C5, D5, E5. And so I can actually drag this down, and I'm just going to drag it all the way, even though I don't have a number here. And you can see, like I'll click this one, C7, D7, E7. So the autofill is going to kind of become your friend really quickly. It's really helpful in these things. And you can do this not just with the formula that we did, this plus this plus this. We can also do like this sum formula, or I can do the auto sum, either way. So, but I can grab a hold of this and drag this all the way over. and see how it filled out everything. Now, remember me telling you earlier that that box lies to me. So this row here, this contains the totals of, like this 15 is the total of this range of cells. This 30 is the total of this range of cells. This 45 is the total of this range of cells. This time I'm going to do something a little different. This time I'm going to do average. So I'll start my formula out the same way, equals, and then rather than using the sum function, I'm going to use the average function. All right, so let's look at what happened here. Again, Excel looked at this and it says, okay, he's going to put an average formula next to a range of cells. But look what this range also includes. This is the total. It includes the total C9 in my formula. So if I'm not paying attention and I let this go on, it's going to say that the average of these cells is 5. And the only reason it's 5, because you can see 5 is actually the highest of the total, is because I included this 15. What I would need to do is I'm just going to get rid of this formula and do it again. Equals, and I'll click on average. Whoops. Hold on, I think I screwed that up. Click on this cell. Yeah, get out of it. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to click on this cell and I'm going to say, whoops, equal, gets my functions going. Here, equal, we'll get it in a second, equal. And I'm going to click on average, and rather than include the D9, I'm just going to click and drag and not include it. And you'll see that now my average is 3, because that's probably the average of these cells, yes. So just be careful, and again, I can click on this and it's going to give me the average all the way across of what I wanted. So like this one is E4 through E8. So it remembered the range that I selected here, it remembered the range here. Now this autofill thing, you can also do this for some words. So I can go up here and type Jan for like January, and I can grab hold of the sizing handle and it's going to do the months for me. Now if I click and drag down or to the right, it's going to increase. It's going to January, February, March, January, February, March. If I click and drag up, whoops, let's move it. If I click and drag up or to the left, it will go backwards for me. January, December, November, October. And the same thing I can do with like days of the week. Monday. And it will go ahead and change all that for me. Select this for me. All right, so that's an introduction to like just the basics of Excel. When we come back, I'll actually start on a formula, or start on some formulas. So, talk to you in a bit.